As customers of banking and financial services, we are bombarded with frequent tech-led changes that ease access but are also confusing and for some of us really challenging. Cash continues to be king even though the COVID-19 lockdown has accelerated digital payments like nothing else before. So what are the challenges and opportunities for financial services marketing in this changed landscape? I've got three key stakeholders with unique roles and vantage points in this ecosystem. Please welcome Ravi Santhanam. He's the CMO and Head of Corporate Communications, as well as Head of Liability Products and Managed Programs at HDFC Bank. Sujata V. Kumar is Visa's Head of Marketing for India and South Asia, and Shalini Pillai Banerjee, Head of Marketing for Google Pay and Next Billion Users, or NBU, for India. It's lovely to see all of you. I'm so glad you could join me.
Thank you for having us.
It's such a changed landscape that we are dealing with. Ravi, I'm going to come to you and ask you, is the pace of change in your sector perhaps faster than any other sector, or does it just feel like that?
The reality is it has been extremely fast, and sometimes we have been left behind by what the consumers have wanted and what they have got from the rest of the players. And the perception is the reality is actually true. And that's what we all feel.
Would you be able to describe, one or two key things that sort of encapsulate exactly what you said, that the rate of pace is so quick, so fast that you may have been left behind sometimes as organizations?
See, before the pandemic started, 90% of the transactions were anyway digital in a banking industry. But what the pandemic made sure is the remaining 10% of the transactions also started coming into digital. And these are all the people who didn't want to do digital earlier. That's the point number one. The second important point is while transactions were digital, the actual sales of many of these products were not digital. It was still highly distribution-led environment, highly branch relationship-led environment.
Right.
And there were many products which could actually move into this digital way of selling. And what the pandemic has made consumers move in that direction is, if I can buy a ticket in an app, I can as well buy a personal loan also in an app. And that was the biggest change that we have seen in the last 18 months.
Sujata, you want to add in how the landscape has changed? For instance, at this point of time, you're running, Visa is running with PV Sindhu as the face of that campaign, the TAP campaign, right? So a contactless use of your credit or debit cards. You want to tell us whether this technology was advanced because of COVID-19? Because the technology is not new, it's just the use of it and the rollout. Was that advanced because of what Ravi has just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally echo what Ravi said. We've seen huge growths in adoption of cashless payment methods over the past 1.5 years. And it's really been spurred since the pandemic started because, consumers who largely used cash have had to move to cashless methods, whether it's, like you said, at point of sale, where they use tap to pay or contactless cards, or even at home, they use e-commerce and doing that through the cashless payments method. And it has really gone up because people now, don't want to actually interact with cash. And even in e-commerce, the entire way of paying earlier, which was cash on delivery, has actually come to a stop after the pandemic started.
Right. And that was something that e-commerce players tried so hard to get people to do. In fact, the cash on delivery was perhaps an India-focused innovation, isn't it? Let me get Shalini in here. Shalini, life before and after COVID-19 at GPay, what's the difference?
Let's kind of step back. I think there's been changes across in terms of digital behavior itself, right? So the changes we're seeing is almost what we're seeing in the last 10 months would have usually taken 10 years to do. Simple metric to kind of just put that in perspective. Data consumption, if we take data consumption in 2014, the average data consumption was 86 MB. It moved up to 8 GB when data prices fell in 2018. But in the last few months, it's gone up to 14 GB. Now that fundamentally has changed how people interact and operate on the internet. We now have close to 600 million Indians online. 42% of them are women. We now have more rural rural internet users than even urban India. And that impact has happened simply because how digital has started playing a role in their lives. The pandemic has basically made every person operate very differently and forcing them almost to live online in the way they do their day-to-day things, they transact, the way they talk, the way they interact, right? And it's almost like earlier it was what I can do to how I can do it. So it's the digital has almost helped them make them self-reliant. And that's what we see in digital payments too.
So Shalini, then for GPay as a marketer, you really didn't have much to do. The market was all willing and ready to be yours, isn't it?
Well, not exactly, right? Because if you think about it, the number of people that first came in, the first wave of people that came in, the first 100 million people that came in, and the next wave that has come in are very, very different, right? The first wave are people that took in, it's easy, it's convenient, it's simple. The next wave that's come in, 50% of them are actually new to UPI. Most of them are women. They're coming from tier 3 cities. They are younger. So their needs are a bit different. For them, the first, we need to think about how you can deepen and think about beyond certain payments. While for the new users that are coming in, it's about being simple, about being safe and feeling confident in how you need to do the payment.
Right. Ravi, we are speaking in the month just a few weeks ago, actually a few days ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched e-rupee. Now that's a new way of transacting again that's available, and it's not just for government, government subsidies and government welfare schemes, which are for certain target groups. Even corporates, we believe, have used it to give, vouchers for vaccinations. So the question to you is, in this, when you have these new payment methods, how does it affect you at HDFC Bank, or how does it affect banks and therefore the marketing that you need to do?
The first question is, it doesn't affect banks. What all these things are doing is actually trying to solve a consumer problem in a very, very specific way, in a very sharp way, which was not being solved by the big behemoths which were there before. So I don't see it as a problem. It's a great opportunity because it is deepening the market in terms of digital penetration, digital cash penetration. So more data comes in, basis which the banks is going to lend going forward. So we are very happy that more and more people are getting into the digital world, and we are getting to see their credit profiles and credit history being made over a period of time. And when you actually get all these data, you also need a balance sheet to lend to those people. And we have that balance sheet. So I see it as a great opportunity for the banks. From a marketing perspective, it is all about how do we make these people consistently keep using that for the benefit of the bank. Over a period of time, you will see the banks coming big time into all these areas to leverage on what a person like, say, for example, Google Pay or a Phone Pay is doing. I see it as a tremendous opportunity.
Okay, so you're saying that these are not competitive.
Exactly, it's an ecosystem that is being created. Banks created a certain part of the ecosystem. Now it's the time of the fintech players like Google Pay and Phone Pay, which is actually, see, at the end of the day, what they are doing, they're trying to convert cash. 85% of the economy is anyway cash, and if they're going to get even 5% into the digital economy, we'll be the ones who will be benefited. So I see it as an ecosystem play, and everybody has a huge role to play, and everybody has a huge opportunity to capitalize on.
Right. Sujata, the marketing challenge in this very, very dynamic marketplace, what do you see it as? And also a word on consumer behavior and how dramatically or radically has that changed in the past year or so, where the whole world went through this never before experience of COVID-19 and the lockdown?
Thanks. Actually, we did a research internally which showed that, if consumers use a certain behavior for 66 days, that behavior becomes permanent. And as we know, the pandemic has lasted far longer. So a lot of behaviors that started during this period has continued. And as Ravi said, I think the biggest exercise is to move consumers from cash to cashless, because we're predominantly a cashless society. So that's been the objective, to move consumers, whether, like I said, it's when they're out shopping or when they're at home shopping, and whichever method they choose to do it, whether it's through cards, whether it's through UPIs, there are all ways to go cashless, and there's a huge room for all players to have a role in this.
Right, but Ravi, while I understand that everybody gets together and grows the market and this ecosystem, given the nature of the Indian market, is there not, some amount of, competition that could come into play at some point? I mean, if I transact through GPay, does GPay not, do you still get to know exactly what my transactions are? I know my account may be with you and therefore you would know, but GPay could also reach me if I opted in for that service, with advertising and with offers and stuff like that, isn't it? So what I'm trying to say is, while on the whole, given the nature of the Indian market, it is collaborative and it's, all these players are performing roles which will help everybody in the long run, isn't there competition and isn't there some loss of opportunity as a result of each one of these players?
It can be seen in multiple ways. I think in the balance of the overall ecosystem, the way we see it is I don't think Google is going to become a bank, at least for the next 3, 4, 5 years in this country. So finally, the transaction happens through the banks only. So we get to know your income anyway, much ahead of time before even the fintech players come to know for your income. Using the transactions, they are going to offer you better services, and it is going to increase the depth of what you use the digital money for. And that's where we think they have a role to play in increasing the depth of the transactions, which allows us to learn a lot more about this new set of people, as Google Pay people were talking about, in terms of getting to know them. See, today, at the end of the day, in the banking system, we have a certain amount of customers whose income profile we know very well.
Sure.
But if you talk about the rest of the country, which is the next 10 million, next 100 million, next 100 million, we have very little credit information available about them. Now, this kind of digital transaction is going to bring those people on board. And that is a big opportunity in the country. And we're not bothered about what is currently available only as the opportunity. We see that as a much, much bigger opportunity than what is currently available.
Shalini, you want to just elaborate on the kind of insights you shared on the people who were the new customers of GPay in the last year? I mean, I found it very interesting that you said women, you said smaller towns, not just the metros. Give us a sense of that, because Ravi is also alluding to exactly that, the new population that you're getting on board.
Absolutely. I think, when you think about the next 100 million users that are going to come on board, the type of users that are there are going to experience digital payments for the first time. They're going to need a lot of assistive rather than self-learning. That's going to happen quite a bit. The other thing, they're going to be resource constrained. So the way they will think about digital payments is that, do I get a saving here or not? Let's put it in perspective. For example, a mobile recharge. Now, their offline behavior would have been, I'll go to a store because I'll get the best deals. Now, will a digital payment help me to make a saving, not just in terms of time, but will I get the best deal over there when I make my mobile recharge happen? So, those are interlinked that are happening. But the biggest barrier to actually come on to digital payments is still going to be trust. Because they're so used to a certain pattern and behavior that they're going to start, trust is going to be the barrier, while savings will be the motivator. So that's going to start coming in. When you think about women, there's a more added complexity, because most women in India today have joint accounts. Phone numbers aren't linked to them, and they don't have direct control over there. So this is going to require a lot more ecosystem work to make more women enabled and empowered on the digital payments.
Right. Sujata, how does, when you're hearing this information, and I'm sure, this is something that you're also dealing with, what are the opportunities that you see here? And, trust and safety, are these things, does marketing have an educational role also at this point of time?
Absolutely. And what I'd like to say also as Visa is we partner. So we work with Ravi in HDFC. We work with Shalini and team in Google Pay as well. So there's really truly a partnership that happens. The three things that we see that come through benefits of using cashless is actually speed, convenience, and security. And as Shalini mentioned, for consumers, the biggest worry they have is security. So we actually do a lot of educational videos and things to consumers to explain how their transaction happens on the digital space and how it is secure, it is safe, it is encrypted, so that they can feel comfortable doing these transactions going forward.
What do you tell your team? What do you tell the agencies you work with? What do you tell your media that you spend money on? What is the role? How much of it is actually education? How much of it is communicating new stuff that's available? And how much of it is brand building and therefore market share?
Brand building will take 50% of the work, because I think that's a foundation on which everything else is getting built. So we use the capability of the bank to build the brand across each and every touch point, across each and every interaction that you have as a consumer. That's one part of the job. The most important part of the job when you want to expand the ecosystem is, as Sujata was saying, it's all about education for the customer. How do we actually make these use cases come alive for those customers? So the brief to the agencies is bring multiple use cases, bring multiple scenarios where multiple segments of people can see those use cases and say, hey, for this particular problem, here is the solution that is being offered, so I can join the bandwagon. So how do you expand the market is the biggest brief for the agencies as well as for our teams.
Right. Shalini, how would you see the marketing challenge for GPay?
So I think very well, articulated by Ravi in terms of how we look at the segments. And for us also, it is the same thing because you are straddling two different type of customer segments. So, but the principles remain the same. The first three principles remain about winning user trust. The second one is making them understand about frictionless experiences, right? And the third is to make sure that they feel included. There is an inclusion angle to the whole thing. To make sure all three work, we have to kind of talk to the user in that sense. So a lot of our work is right now focused around understanding the different pay flows, making them feel comfortable that this is what they can do beyond what they already know, right? So to give you a perspective, a lot of people they know they can pay a merchant, they can pay another person, they can even do a recharge. But less than 1 in 100 actually even do their household billing through the app. So there's a huge headroom. So there is a focus where we need to keep educating a user on what more you can do. But on the other hand, like I said, for the next 200 million, it's about making them trust the app. And for that, we're also focusing on what it means. So that's why we've been partnering with NPCI's UPI Chalengi for the Digital Abhiyan program, which is educating users on how safe and secure it can be. So it is a bit of both.
Yeah. Also, Sujata, what about, we are talking about a segment which is large in percentage and real terms in a country like India, which has got the smartphone and which has digital access. But what about the much larger part of India which doesn't have all of this? I talked about e-rupee earlier. I mean, it is for people who don't even have bank accounts, isn't it? So and smartphones. So with a normal feature phone and without a bank account, you could get that subsidy you're entitled to either from the private sector or from the government, subsidy from the government or a payment from the private sector. So how do you see access to this part of India?
So the first thing is, there are more than 800 million bank accounts and debit cards out in force today. So that means, most of the population has a means to do digital payments. So that's one of the things which we focus on, which is to let people know that they have the means to do this and to give them the reassurances that they look at that, like I said, that safety and security is taken care of and that this is a quick and convenient way to pay. So I think three things that we look at. Number one, the role of the brand, because like I said, Visa enables a lot of this and we work with partners across sectors. Second is the benefits of convenience, speed, and safety during the times of the pandemic. And third is the whole security through the encryption that they get through these transactions.
Right. Ravi, how do you go beyond the smartphone owning person how do you reach rest of India?
See, we have this excellent partnership with the CSCs of the government, central government organized CSCs. And we have more than 25,000 VLEs who are currently working as banking correspondents. And we have more than 150,000 people enrolled. And these are the people who are there in the villages. They already have a computer. They have a 100 square foot office. And they are today acting as our banking correspondents. And we use them extensively to leverage their presence to educate people to come and join the bandwagon. And we are seeing tremendous success in these areas, not only in opening bank accounts and getting the payment products inside, but also starting to sell loan products like a consumer durable loan and a personal loan and an auto loan. And we have this kind of an energy available because of our partnership to go into these areas. And as Shalini was saying, this is going to be the assisted mode initially. And we have our network of branches as well as our extraordinary network of CSCVLs present to reach out to almost 100,000 villages today.
Right. Shalini, when GPay is available in other markets, when you look at India and you see the rest of the world, how different is the Indian, financial and banking marketplace?
I think we leapfrogged, right? As a country, we've almost leapfrogged into digital payments. So that's been exciting. to see as a journey for India itself. But there is so much to learn when you look at the other markets and how they've innovated across different use cases. So there is constant learning in terms of what we can do. But I think India is kind of leading the way a bit over here on digital payments.
Ravi, choice of media is the targeted communication. Does digital take precedence over television and other media today in today's landscape for you?
I don't think so. I think media choice is all about what is the purpose of what we all want to do. I still believe television will give you the reach if you want to really create a huge amount of awareness. And even digital today has become another television channel, right? With all the OTT plays available, we can't just say digital as the same old digital, which was, they say, 3 years back. Today, the digital is also OTT, and people spend 4 hours watching the same TV serials on their phones. So for me, digital is also another TV channel available. Plus, digital gives you the extraordinary ability to target. So it'll be a mix of what is the purpose behind it. If it is education, I will still put my money on the big bang. And if it is more sharp, targeted shop shooting, then it will be more of digital.
Then it could just be my email, isn't it? All I need is an email from my bank.
Not only email, I think we all know that how much attention you have in terms of reading through all these stuff. And we do know that you spend a lot of time looking at your screen. And how do I actually integrate in your life cycle and in your day-to-day way of working out things, and how do I integrate and just come at the right moment for you to know that we exist for you to be better served.
Sure.
And that's a challenge, and that's the biggest opportunity which digital provides.
Okay, I'm going to have to wind this show up, but I'm going to ask all of you one question to sort of close the show. The same question to everybody, starting with Sujata. Sujata, one big learning as a marketer in this past year and a half, close to 2 years, and 2 waves of this awful pandemic.
I think the biggest learning for us has been that, if we give a solution to consumers that make their life easier in the current scenario, they will adopt it. And therefore, you see growths that you would not imagine in the short time period. As long as you make a consumer's lifestyle easier, you fit your brand and your product into it effortlessly, then you have a success.
Ravi?
A brand that stays with the customer during tough times reaps the reward during the good times.
Okay. Shalini?
I think it's resilience. I think from users and the way they've kind of adopted and adapted, right? Almost owning the uncertainty has been a fantastic thing to see. And being helpful in these times is something that we've been very, very proud to be.
Okay, lovely. Good thoughts to end this show on. Thank you very much, Sujata, Shalini, Ravi, for joining me. And thank you for watching. Do look out for another conversation on the Media Dialogues next week. And stay tuned to CNBC TV 18 in the meanwhile.